so that we can find out how to get the lights in the right way for our tape recording. Does anybody know Oaks College well?
I think go down to the office and ask someone.
That would be very helpful.
Okay.
If you could do that, because the university people who record things, I remember them wrecking my poor, unfortunate inaugural lecture. Because I didn't mind the machine breaking down, but they keep bringing it back and then it would break down again. And they've broken down again. And they're not here today, but a kind friend has come up from town to help us. And it's more for the benefit of the university archive than for anything else, that we want to record a truly memorable visit. And I think that my friend who I've sent off to check with the management to get the lights going, he was really the person who should have been introducing the speaker, because he's done all the work. We are a self-generating group in my classes. I receive the salary and the kids do all the work, you see. And they organize things, they call people in, they bring in visitors, and they give so richly of themselves. And we are so grateful to see you joining in this incredibly important topic: peace, violence, reconciliation, atonement, at-one-ment. We began at Yom Kippur and have tried to go forward. Mother Nature sent us an earthquake to think about in the middle, and I thought the kids' reaction was absolutely fantastic. One of our speakers spoke about having both breasts and a womb and the adrenal removed, and what that meant by way of facing forms of faceless violence. And we think also of death. But I don't think that's probably a form of violence as is meant by nature to be. So we appreciate your coming. I forgot to say hello to my friend Frank Andrews, who's always looked after us. And I think you have a book forthcoming soon. Tell us the name, Frank.
The Art and Practice of Loving.
Right.
Art and Practice of Loving.
Now, from a professor, are you really general science?
No, chemistry.
Chemistry, yeah. My Zoroaster.
Don't tell anybody. He's spilling the beans here.
Anyway, I'm not told it, but it's going to be an absolutely brilliant book. And these Harvard men, you can't keep them down. They're always writing wonderful books. So it's a very informal session. Babaji tells me he would like it best if you ask questions and he tried to answer, and we might answer for him. You might answer for him, as the case may be. Babaji, thank you for coming. I reverence the spirit of service in you.
You know, he was doing that in front of you. We all feel the beauty of that moment, and we also all see the humor of it. It's like, in that case, I am what's called a rent-a symbol. You know, I am the Babaji. I'm just the representative of Babaji-ness that he is honoring. It has nothing to do with me. If I take it personally, that's my problem. You here? Make sure you heard your lady. Okay. So, I'm going to ask a question, but I was at this temple way back in '67 in India with this young Western surfer from Laguna Beach, who had been in India for 7 years. Bhagavad Gita was very far out. And so we were meditating in an old temple, and I went out sort of meditating. When I woke up, there was a pile of coins in front of me, because people would come along and they honored the person that was doing the spiritual practices, because that's what you do in India, and they left money for me. And I felt really weird about that. And as I got up to walk out, they touched my feet, and I said to Bhagwan Das, I'm going to get out of here. I don't want to be back. That's terrible. And he said, it's just a symbol. He says, just surrender into playing the symbol. So when they do that, they're doing that to the symbol of it, and you thank them for it, and you honor them back in your mind. It's not appropriate for you as a sadhu to touch their feet. Well, they can touch your feet. And it's not any disrespect if you honor them and play your part perfectly. Then the transaction's completed. And he really taught me how to do that, to accept the honoring just then, fully. At the same moment, seeing that it's all empty form. Questions? You can ask about anything. There are, part of my work on myself is truth, and not hiding anything. Anything you'd like to know about it? How many of you were there at the lecture this morning? Great, okay. You got all the input you need. Now it's your problem. Yes. Yeah.
I was wondering, after you read any of your work, and I was wondering if you could just give me some background on what it is that you do with working with yourself.
How I work on myself, what my practices are? Well, my basic practice is what's called Guru Kripa, or grace of the Guru. It's a relationship to a Guru. And the art form of that is that it's a form that you can relate to, and at the same moment, to the extent that that being is a real Guru, they're not attached to that form. And they free you until you meet them in no form. It's a way of going from form into no form, through another being, which is nice for the human heart. It's easy. But in the course of it, I've spent now since 19 years doing Vipassana meditation, Buddhist meditation, which, like I'll go to Burma and sit for 2 months in a monastery where I'm given a cell, and at 3 in the morning I awaken and follow the breath rising and falling in my abdomen. And I do that for an hour, and then I walk for an hour, just lift, move, place. Lift, move, place. Keeping my consciousness right with that. And there are 2 meals a day before noon. The last one's because you don't eat after noon. You're alone completely, doing for 17 hours a day, either rising and falling of the abdomen or lifting, moving, placing. That's all you do. You see the teacher for 5 minutes a day. That's it. 2 months. That's practice. I'm just sharing you practice. You go in and you say to him, I was meditating last evening and I became aware of the sound of a bird. I noted it as listening. And he'd say to me, did you notice the sound of the bird on a rising breath or a falling breath? And you say, I didn't notice. And he says, well, do better next time. And as you're leaving, he says, this morning, did you awaken on a rising breath or a falling breath? Holy shit. So that's practice. Then I've spent quite a bit of time in Zen Buddhism, some monasteries in Kyoto. I tell you, like the question is, what's my active practice? Like it was a long time I was a hatha yogi. I did asanas and breathing and did long fasts and all that for maybe 8 years. Another part of my practice is what's called karma yoga, meaning the yoga of using my life experiences to go beyond them. It's like finding God through this dialogue. So I'm not doing this and then I'm going to go home and do my practices. This is my practice. To the extent that I get caught in any attraction or aversion, in any grasping or hatred or ill will, any pushing or pulling, There's where the work is. Until you sit with the universe and you just look at it just the way it is. Each thing as it comes, you say, yeah. You know the story of the monk, the girl that's down in the village, and she gets pregnant by the local fisherman. She doesn't want to confess it's the fisherman, so she points to the monk up at the hill, and she says it's the monk of the monastery. So the community takes the baby, and they go up, and they knock at the gates of the monastery, and the monk opens the door, and they say, you father this baby, you bring it up. And the monk says, ah, so. Takes the baby, closes the gate. 9 years later, the girl is dying, and she doesn't want to die without confessing that it was the fisherman, which she does, and then they're all sorry, the townspeople, they go up and they knock at the gate, and he opens the gate, he's standing with a 9-year-old boy, and they say, we made a mistake. It's not your baby, we'll take over the raising of the baby. Ah, so. That's the one, that's the place. Ah, so. Oh, the world's just ending. Ah, so. Oh, the perfect age finally happened. Ah, so. Such questions. That's part of my practice.
There's a part of Christopher the Mill that I never understood. There was a Zen master, and he asked you to get the sound of a cricket chirping or something, and you cupped your ear. What was that?
Yeah. There's a Zen master, Sasaki Roshi, not Suzuki Roshi, who died. He was in San Francisco. But Sasaki Roshi's in the south, and he's of the other sect of Zen, in which you're given a koan, an insoluble problem that the rational mind can't solve. So there was a kind of a holy man jam weekend in which Satchidananda was there, and I was there, and Sasaki Roshi was there, and Brother David Stengel Rast were there, and the Mishpachah, the kind of spiritual family gathered. And then we all put each other through each other's practices all weekend. That was fun. And so Sasaki Roshi gave us all this koan, how you know you're a cricket, how you know you're being through sound of cricket. So you got to go in and bow, and then he asks you the question, you got to give him an answer. And then he judges you. He's got a bell and a stick. You get one thing, you get the bell, that dismisses you, or you get the stick, or he says something else. It's called dokusan. So I'm sitting planning, you're supposed to be just, solving your koan, but I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to say to him. I figure, well, how do you know the sound of a cricket? I figured I'd go like this. That seemed like a hip thing to do because in Milarepa, the Tibetan yogi, that's the picture of him listening to the sound of God. So I figured I'll give here I am, a Jewish Hindu, giving a Zen master a Tibetan answer, and I figured that's really worth something. So I went and I gave, doctor, how you know your Buddha nature through sound of cricket? So I went like this, and he says, 70%, and he rang the bell. Then you really sucked in. You want the other 30%. So sometime later, I was in a hot tub in New Mexico with Allen Ginsberg and a Tibetan nun. That's the way it was. And I was about to have a few days of just hanging out, and a telegram arrived saying, we have reserved a space for you in the Rohatsu Dai Sesshin. That's the 9-day most intensive of the Zen practices in that sect. I didn't ask them to reserve a space. I didn't want a space. I was really happy in the hot tub. This thing was going to start the next day in California, and I was in New Mexico. It was going to start at Mount Baldy outside of LA. So I looked at this telegram, and what is this about? And then I thought, well, I knew I was going to hate it, but I knew it was just what I needed for my practice. And within a few hours, I was on the plane out of Albuquerque going to LA. And I come up the next day, and I've, made this great sacrifice to get liberated. I led the hot tub and all. And I expect when I get up the mountain to say, oh, Ram Dass, we're so honored you're here, and the whole shtick. And I walk in, and the guy looks at the list. He says, Das, you're all in black. He says, Das, here are your robes. You're in the upper berth in cabin 3B. Report to the Zendo in 6 minutes. And not a warmth. And I think, holy mackerel, I gave up the hot tub for this. So then you sit. You got to sit like this. And you start early in the morning. Leonard Cohen, the musician, he was in the next Zafu to me. And he had sneakers that were too big for him. And the reason I know is because we have to run in the morning at 3:30 in the morning in line. And you can only look at the back of the other person's shoes. So I watched Leonard Cohen slipping out of his sneakers for 10 minutes. So you sit there like this, and if you, like in the morning when your sinuses are draining and all, and I had a beard then, if you go like that, the guy comes with a stick. And the minute you hear him walking down the thing, you think, please, dear God, let it be somebody else. And then he comes right up, and he stops, and he turns. See, he's got the stick. And you're sitting there like this. And at that point, you bow to him, he bows to you. And then you put your arm like this so he can hit you here. Then you put it here so he can hit you here. And then the two of you bow to each other, and it goes on. He's there to serve you. So then I go through this for 5 days. I mean, it's all day long. It is so controlled. And 5 times a day you got to go in to have this guy say you're a total idiot. And he was doing things like, oh, doctor, I'm so disappointed in you. I expected so much more. Oh, God. And then you got to run back and sit like this. And plan for the next one. You're going to have another one in 3 hours. Around the 5th day, I was running a fever. I was trying to think of some emergency that would get me out of the place. And I'm walking up to do the Dokusan, and I look at the bush there, and it's burning. I think, aha! It's working. And then I just kind of surrender, and I say, okay. And I was just empty. And I walked in, and he says, ah, doctor, how you know your Buddha nature through sound of cricket? And I said, good morning, Roshi. I mean, that was just, good morning, hi. And he said, ah, now you are becoming beginning student of Zen. You feel partial reinforcement, it's called. I've never been back. Questions, sir?
Why is there attachment?
The question is, why is there attachment? Interestingly enough, if you force the answer back to its prime source, the predicament is there is not an answer that can be given this way, in words. And I can say to you, there is attachment because of karma. There is karma if you follow the law of dependent origination of the whole cycles of births and deaths, and the attachment and the clinging goes all the way back. It keeps creating the universe over and over again with the clingings of mind. And then you say, where did it begin? And one of the answers the Buddha gives is none of your business, which really means that your rational mind can't grok it. It's not something that you can ask and I can answer. It's something we can be, but we can't know. We know. You hear what I'm playing with the idea? And you can feel that your present attachments come out of your previous attachments, and your previous attachments come out of your previous attachments, and so it goes. That the clinging, the minute you have an intention in any act, you create karma, you create more stuff. And what you're doing is you're awakening out of being identified with the actor. Like I'm not making my heart beat, it's just beating. And I'm just sitting here. I'm not the actor, I'm just what's happening. As I pull back and I'm this quiet, then the actions happen out of harmony in the universe, and there is no karma created. Because I'm not intending anything. And yet I'm right here. The statement is, he does nothing, and nothing is left undone. It's that paradox that you struggle with. And at that point, you're not creating any new karma. Then you are just old karma running off. That's all you are. And then when it's done, like the Buddha said, they said, where will you go when you die? He says, where does the fire go when the fuel's used up? I mean, was it or wasn't it? Or is it not? Yeah.
I've heard. I didn't know who you were until yesterday, but
It's okay.
I heard that you used to do tricks,
Tricks?
like walking on coals.
No.
No, this is not true.
Somebody else.
It was somebody else.
Yeah.
You never done
I
any
have no
tricks?
powers at all.
Good. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have no powers at all.
How do you address your Jewishness? How does it manifest? And where is it taking you?
Well, it's a tricky problem to reconcile one's religious identity in any lifetime with reincarnation. Because the facetious answer, which I hear is facetious, and yet it has a germ of truth in it, is I'm only Jewish on my parents' side. And that what I identify as myself is not that. It's not the incarnation. That's just an incarnation. That isn't who I am. I'm neither Jewish, nor Christian, nor Hindu, nor Buddhist, nor Taoist, nor none of those. Zoroastrians, I don't know. Because I feel the truth in all of those things. And yet, I say, what does it mean to have been born Jew, which is the question you're asking, and to honor the incarnational form? It seems to me that the qualities that I've received thus far out of Judaism is its search for truth, which is what the Talmudic scholars are about, and its qualities of compassion that has come out of its suffering, in part, and part out of its romantic, poetic spirit. So then I say, if I'm going to honor this, if I'm going to be a real Jew, and I'm going to honor that search for truth, and that quality of compassion, then whatever I do, it's like being a Sufi. Whatever I do, it doesn't take me at all away from Judaism. Like the Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, is the simplest translation of a lot of much more subtle ones. But there's one. It's not me and him, there's one. And the best way I can honor it is to become it. And that's chutzpah in exoteric Judaism. It's not chutzpah in esoteric Judaism or in the deeper truths of Judaism. So I have to deal with a dualistic religious tradition that I am incarnated in. My problem is that I was raised as a social political Jew, not a religious Jew. I was a sentimental social political Jew. And my father started Brandeis University and Einstein Medical School and all these things. And he was in the United Jewish Appeal and all that stuff. And that was what Judaism was for me. And then I met Zalman Schachter. And Zalman and I got high one night. And we had the talus wrapped around us, and we were drinking wine, and we were dancing. And I thought, now here's a Jew that I could listen to. Because all the rest of the Jews were always trying to save me. They were trying to bring me back to my Judaism. They were trying to bring me back to their Judaism. I would say my journey is just at the beginning of understanding why I was born a Jew. And I figure it'll take the rest of my life. Because I think the religion you start with is often the one you come back to last. When you fully grok the truth, then you're ready. Because the depth of your reaction against the parts of it that were not pure, when you were an innocent, the violence it did to you has to be undone. Does that deal with your question?
To what extent has learning Sanskrit, if you have learned
I
Sanskrit,
have not. I mean, I'd say prayers in Sanskrit, but I've never learned the language.
how much of a difference does it make to say those in Sanskrit? Does it help you understand these spiritual paradoxes?
Well, it's interesting. There are a lot of qualities about, I mean, the Catholic Church dealt with this and whether to change the prayers from Latin, you know. But in Sanskrit, it's interesting, because Sanskrit, as you probably know, is an intentional language. That is, the sounds of the language are designed to vibrate in your body in certain places. Just like the rag music structure in India, there is a certain pattern of notes you use on autumn rainy nights between 6 and 9, you know, and they've got it all down, so they know what's going to connect with you at that moment and what needs to be done. So Sanskrit has that precision to it, so that when you take a mantra, like take a simple one as Ram, 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 compare that to Om Mani Padme Hum Na 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 Om Mani Padme. There's another one. Aditya Hridayam Punyam Sav Shatru Vinashanam. All evil vanishes from life for one who keeps the sun in the heart. Here's one more, a fire ceremony. Ayim Hrim Kling Chamundaye Vijay Swaha. Ayim Hrim Kling Chamundaye Vijay Swaha. Can you feel how every one of these has its own vibratory quality that touches you in certain ways? And since the content of the thing is just a takeoff place for the mind, it goes from the mind to the throat, where you just saying it, stop thinking about it, to the heart, then it just goes into your being. Till pretty soon the mantra's doing you, then you know it's working. But this is really a science. It's not just schlock play. Is that answering your question?
Yeah.
How does a guru become a guru? And could you tell us about how you found your guru?
A guru becomes a guru by going to guru school. It is Guru 206. A guru doesn't... See, the real gurus are only gurus to somebody else. They're not gurus to themselves, and they don't think of themselves as gurus. They're just what they are. They're like a tree or a river or something like that. So in a way you could say they have died out of their separateness, and they're just part of nature at that point. And therefore they have no attachment, no aversion, and they're just there. They're just present.
some of them arrived at it through great practices, like I've been talking about, like meditation or chanting or mantra or fast.